difference between a petition and an application is that in a petition, you deal with the declared winner. In an application, you deal with interested parties. Now, once it is accepted that in an application you deal with interested parties, all the interested parties who are cited have an absolute right to decide what it is that they want to say once placed before the court. The position taken, or the point taken by the first respondent, in respect of which the 23rd respondent joins itself in chorus, is with respect clearly faulty. And this is how it is faulty. It means a respondent in an application brought under section 93 cannot consent to the relief that is sought. Whilst it is true that in terms of Rule 16, the form, which is CCZ1, invites a respondent to oppose if they are so inclined, it does not debar them from consenting to the relief sought. So at the end of the day, the question which in our respectful submission ought to be answered is whether there is any basis, either in the Constitution or in first principle, for saying to a respondent, if you are brought to court, your sole purpose or the only position that you can take is an opposition. But that, with respect, there is no warrant for that in our submission. I need to emphasize the point that the attitude to be adopted by a respondent is the respondent's and the respondents alone. It cannot be informed by what the applicant says. It cannot be informed by what a fellow respondent says. Neither, with respect, can a court say to a respondent, thus far can you go and no further. I also wish to make the point that consenting to an application is not bringing an application. You have respondents before the court who say, whereas we could not bring an application, whereas we did not want to bring an application, whereas we had no basis for bringing an application, we have read this application. And having read the application, we believe the applicant is not backing mad. We believe the applicant might be correct. There is nothing with respect that stops that from happening. Now there's an important issue that has been asked. What then happens when a respondent raises an issue which has not been raised by the applicant? Now I want to place two quick responses before the court. In terms of Rule 45 of the Constitutional Court Rules, which allows the court to make reference to the rules of the High Court, by Rule 235, if after an answering affidavit has been filed by an applicant, one of the parties takes the view that there is something before the court which merits an answer, an avenue is created in terms of Rule 235. And the avenue created in terms of Rule 235 allows an aggrieved respondent, allows a respondent who otherwise would be prejudiced to seek leave from the court for purposes of filing a document. I also wish to make the point that for practical purposes, and should the court believe that there is some ganging up, so it's an allegation that has been used, there is nothing that stops the court from saying the respondents who are not opposed to the application shall, for purposes of argument, be treated as applicants. Indeed, that was the approach taken correctly in our submission by Mafusire J in the Grandwell matter, where he said, we'll treat you as an applicant, but with the important rider that you are deprived of the right to reply. So that would be the only practical way out. Ultimately, this issue goes to the question of the right to be heard.
Have you not?
I understand
that.
Right. 1
Sorry.
minute. My Lord, can I get 30 more seconds because of the intervention?
You are still within your time. I'm sorry. You may proceed.
Lord, ultimately, this goes to the right to be heard. By the Constitution, by Scripture, by all standards that pertain to the resolution of mortal disputation. Anyone who has an interest in the matter has the right to be heard. And the right to be heard rings ever so wants to say things which are unpalatable. So I close. Lord, might I just have 30 seconds? I'll not go beyond that. Just 30 seconds, my Lord.
How many minutes?
30 seconds.
Sorry?
I do not even need a minute. 30 seconds.
30 seconds?
30 seconds, my Lord.
All right.
I'll be done in 30
No,
seconds.
all right, I'll grant.
The court would have noted that first respondent's position in his opposition is that the applicant is backing mad. All the other contestants in this election are satisfied with the result of the election. So he was happy for all the other contestants to come before the court and say, we are satisfied. But once they agree with the applicant, he suddenly raises all manner of noise, he suddenly raises all manner of dust. That, with respect, is totally unacceptable. Lords, ladies, those are my submissions.